Commonwealth is at a crossroads. We're facing record inflation and high gas prices.
Any raise or bonus I would have gotten going right back into the tank of the car.
A war raging in Ukraine. And battles are building over healthcare, prescription drugs, and how to deal with the exploding crime problem.
It's not just here, it's almost everywhere.
Tonight, for the first time on one stage, the front-running Democrats who want to be your next U.S. Senator. Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman, Congressman Connor Lamb, State Representative Malcolm Kenyatta. One of these men may tip the balance of power in the country. Hear what they say tonight. You be the judge if they have earned your vote. Live from your local election headquarters in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, this is the Pennsylvania Democratic U.S. Senate debate.
Good evening, welcome, and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Dennis Owens with ABC 27 News in Harrisburg.
And I'm Lisa Sylvester with WPXI Channel 11 News in Pittsburgh, and we are broadcasting and streaming live across every county in the Commonwealth.
The three Democratic candidates standing on the stage tonight have met our eligibility criteria, each hoping to replace retiring Republican Senator Pat Toomey.
So here are the rules for tonight. Each candidate will get 60 seconds to answer a question. The candidate will get 30 seconds to answer if there's a follow-up or a rebuttal. And if a clarification is needed, they will get 15 seconds. And we will remind the candidates throughout the night of those times. The sound of a bell will ring when their time is up.
Our bell is working. You are watching tonight's debate from one of 9 Nexstar media stations across the state and our partner station in Pittsburgh, WPXI TV. Let's get right into the topic on the mind of every Pennsylvanian these days, the economy. According to a Nexstar Emerson College poll released in March, it is the #1 issue for voters. Mr. Fetterman, I'm going to go to you first. Right now, inflation and high gas prices are hitting everyone hard. Mr. Fetterman, you are on record saying you support a suspension of the federal gas tax. In 2020, that amounted to $43 billion. How would you offset that revenue loss? Mr. Fetterman, you have 60 seconds.
Well, of course. We have to remember that inflation is a tax on working families. And as Democrats, we are the party of working families. So we must aggressively attack inflation. How I would offset that is I would just make sure, I would insist that multi-billion-dollar corporations that currently aren't paying any taxes whatsoever pay their fair share. And that also is included for the wealthiest Americans, the hyper-rich, the billionaires, pay their fair share to offset that tax. You know, I went grocery shopping to get Easter eggs to dye for my kids for Easter, and I was taken aback at the cost of $4.29 for 18 eggs. Inflation's real. You know, when you fill up your car, you notice it. And we as Senate candidates and we as Democrats have to aggressively go after it and make sure we're doing everything that we can. And that also includes reimagining our supply chain logistics and insisting that we make more stuff in America. That's just the bottom line. We will have fewer logistical log jams at our ports if we make more stuff in America.
Thank you. Turning to Mr. Lamb, if you are elected to the Senate, would you vote in favor of a temporary or permanent suspension of the federal gas tax? You have 60 seconds.
I don't believe I would, and that's something we've considered. It's very tempting to want to tell people that we could bring the price down for them. The gas tax at the federal level is about 18 cents a gallon. The problem is that, first of all, companies would have no obligation that we can create to actually pass on that 18 cents to the consumer. But the bigger problem is if we don't actually increase production of oil itself, the price won't go down, whether you cut the taxes or not. But what you will lose will be money in the funds that pay for our infrastructure. That's what the federal gas tax goes to. At the same time that we're trying to rebuild a bridge that collapsed in Pittsburgh, you'd be losing money and losing those jobs. What we can control is greater oil production, and we can also lower the price of prescription drugs, health insurance, child care, student loans, schooling, and housing. I have voted for a bill in the House of Representatives to do every one of those things. And I will challenge our Republican opponent to join me in any one of them to create breathing space for the people we want to represent. But their answer will be no. Our answer will be yes, and that's what's going to lead us to victory in November.
Turning to Mr. Kenyatta, same question to you. If you were elected to the Senate, would you vote in favor of a temporary or permanent suspension of the federal gas tax? You have 60 seconds.
Thanks. No, because ultimately, we need to deal with the root causes of inflation and also make sure that we are continuing to build Pennsylvania, to build America, and those funds go to doing just that. What we need to deal with are the hard costs that families are feeling every single day. I grew up in a working poor family in North Philadelphia. I know it all too well. I watched my mom work 12, 16 hours a day, making sure other folks got their medicine as a home health care aide. Then she'd have to come home and ration her insulin. That's why we need to make sure we're lowering the cost of prescription drugs, dealing with the fact that so many families right now don't know how they're going to afford childcare, don't know whether or not their kid is going to be able to go to college and not leave with a mountain of debt. And we also have to hold accountable these big oil and gas companies that have made record profits while still hiking the price at the pump.
Thank you. Lisa.
All right, staying on the topic of the economy and staying with you, Mr. Fetterman, to start us off, all of you have supported ideas to help ease the financial burden on Americans, things like universal health care, things like easing student loan debt. Both Mr. Kenyatta and Mr. Fetterman have supported a tax on the wealthy. I believe, in fact, Mr. Fetterman, you just said that the hyper-rich should pay their fair share. Mr. Fetterman, at what income level would that start at? You have 60 seconds to respond.
Well, I think it's, you know it when you see it. You know, if you're able to afford a super yacht, if you have stock options valued in the billions or hundreds of billions, I think we as a country should decide that we want to make sure we celebrate those that achieve, and we're not, you know, anti-high achievement, but I think it's critical that we make sure that those that are hyper wealthy pay their fair share. I think that's as fundamental of a principle as we could possibly imagine. And you know what that cutoff exactly is. It's, you know it when you see it. If you're a 9-figure kind of you know, net worth individual, I think we want to make sure that those individuals are making an appropriate contribution to add to our tax rolls.
So just a 15-second clarification. Are you saying that 9 figures and above should be where that income level cutoff is?
The billionaires, the you know, like David McCormick, for example, worth maybe, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars. I would want to make sure that David McCormick would be able to pay his fair share as a Connecticut hedge fund manager. Those are the kind of people.
Thank you, Mr. Fetterman. Turning to you, Mr. Lamb, you said that the wealth tax would not be enough, though, to fund the entire Democratic agenda. Some of the things you mentioned, including student loans. How do you propose to pay for these items, these things on the Democratic agenda? 60 seconds, sir.
Sure, and you know, let's just be straightforward. We here are running for the position of senator, in which we have to write legislation and pass it. And the answer that you know it when you see it is just not acceptable for this level of job. You have to put income levels into these bills to make them apply. So what I have worked on and voted for so far is a bill called Build Back Better, where we raise the income tax rate on people that earned over $400,000 to $500,000 a year or above. I also have supported what's called the Billionaires Tax. It usually starts at somewhere around 100 million assets and goes up. Not really to price artwork and yachts and all these things. That's difficult for a lot of reasons, but to get at, you know, the people who live on loans like Jeff Bezos or someone like that and don't pay any taxes because they have so many assets they don't have to. With that money, we fund universal pre-K, the child tax credit, student loan debt relief, the most aggressive climate bill of all time in Build Back Better. That's what an actual legislator does, and that's what I've done in the House of Representatives.
15-second clarification. Would you support increasing taxes on the middle class to pay for the Democratic agenda?
Absolutely not, and I never have. We have supported raising taxes on people, again, at $400,000 to $500,000 a year, personal income, as well as the corporate rate going back up to 26%. I also happen to think that millionaires should pay into the Social Security Trust Fund and the Medicare Trust Fund all year long.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. Turning to you now, Mr. Kenyatta. When you talk about a tax on a wealthy, same thing. What does that mean? What is the income cutoff?
So for me as your senator, if you make under $500,000 a year, I will never vote for anything that raises a penny of your taxes. But in a race that's this significant, you know, as somebody who's been a legislator, I wish I could write a bill that just said, you know it when you see it. That's pretty good. But you have to write a bill that actually tells people what you want to do. Another part of our strategy, though, has to make sure that the IRS has the resources to actually enforce folks who are shielding income that they have, who are not actually holding up their end of the bargain, the American basic bargain. You see these folks who can afford to go to space, people who can say they want to buy Twitter just on a whim, but who are paying more than a secretary at your local school. That's unacceptable, and that is my commitment as your senator. Under $500,000, I'm not going to raise it.
All right, we'll give a 15-second clarification.
It's respectfully, it's disingenuous to say, you know, when you see it and call that. It's like we're talking about high net worth individuals, you know, the $100 million range, and those folks like David McCormick, for example. This idea that you can pick a precise number on a debate stage in 30 seconds is disingenuous.
All right, we have to move on to the new topic.
The next topic is of great interest to the Democratic viewers tonight. It's electability. Mr. Lamb, we're going to begin with you. There's been much speculation among Democratic leaders about who has the best chance of actually winning against a Republican opponent in November. Mr. Lamb, when you first ran for Congress, special election 2018, then Republican House Speaker Paul Ryan said both you and your Republican opponent, quote, ran as pro-gun, pro-life, anti-Nancy Pelosi conservatives. What do you say to Democrats in Pennsylvania who feel you were just too moderate to represent them? You have 60 seconds.
Well, the first thing that they should never do is trust Paul Ryan's political analysis on anything. The statement that you just made, he did say, and it was false when he made it. It's still false here today. The fact is that I have beaten 3 different Republicans in Republican districts, with Donald Trump coming to my district every single time to campaign against me, raise money against me, and all the rest. So what Democrats in Pennsylvania can take away about me is that I have what it takes to withstand the pressure of these campaigns, the attacks. There's nothing new they're going to learn about me. What I've done in the meantime is go to Washington and vote for a woman's right to choose, the Voting Rights Act, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, lowering prescription drug prices, the most aggressive climate bill we've had all time, every gun violence bill that's come since I've been there, bills to create a path to citizenship and give 5 years of legal residence to undocumented immigrants. I mean, the list goes on. So I've delivered on our values, but I'm the only person on this stage who has then gone into Republican territory and beaten a Republican head-to-head when it counts, and that's what prepares me for the election in November.
Mr. Kenyatta, you are next. Your hometown Philadelphia Democratic Party has endorsed Connor Lamb, and the head of the committee, Bob Brady, says, quote, there are people who didn't think Malcolm could win. They didn't think he had the money, and they don't think he could win the primary or the general election. You have 60 seconds, Mr. Kenyatta. Your response to that.
If we think this is going to be about who has the most money, then we should all be for David McCormick right now. This is going to be about who lays out a vision of what it will be and what it will mean for people in their lives if we have a bigger, bolder Democratic majority. I am the person on this stage who can actually engage the regional and demographic base of our party. The only person on this stage from southeastern Pennsylvania, where over half of all the voters are. There are pundits who say Pennsylvania is just not ready to elect an openly gay black guy from North Philadelphia. But let me tell you something, Pennsylvania is more ready for a new day, fresh vision, new leadership than the cynics would have you believe. We're going to win this race because we talk about, with a level of urgency and authenticity, what working families need and what they want to see out of their next senator.
Thank you, Mr. Fetterman. You have a double-digit lead in the polls, and you have raised millions more than your opponents on the stage tonight. I've spoken, however, to several party leaders who question your ability to win a general election in November. Washington County Democratic Party Chair Christina Proctor told the Associated Press, quote, we want to pick the most electable person statewide, and I think a lot of people agree that that person is Connor Lamb. Are you too progressive to be a senator from Pennsylvania? What do you say to that? 60 seconds for you, sir.
By a lot of people, I'm not sure who she's referencing, because a lot of people, based on actual polls, show that I'm actually the one. Let's be honest, running for the United States Senate, it is a statewide election. And I don't know why anyone would waste their time arguing that an elected statewide office isn't elected statewide. And I'm the only candidate on this stage or on the Republican stage that is actually run and won statewide. I want a competitive Democratic primary. I'm the only Pennsylvanian in history to unseat an incumbent lieutenant governor. And when I joined Governor Wolf on the ticket in the fall of 2018, we added 1 million more votes to his bottom line than his previous ticket in 2014. We received more votes than any governor, lieutenant governor ticket in the history of Pennsylvania. We are able to bring out margins that we are going to need, because it's going to be a tough cycle for Democrats. And I'm the only candidate that has always embraced this every county, every vote philosophy, and that's how I believe we're going to win in a tough cycle for Democrats.
Thank you. I do have one quick follow-up from Mr. Lamb, actually, in 30 seconds. As we just said, you've gotten a lot of establishment endorsements, but the polls still strongly favor Mr. Fetterman. 30 seconds. What do you make of that?
The Senate seat belongs to our voters. It doesn't belong to any pollster. So as far as I know, no votes have been cast yet. The score is 0-0. And all I'm asking anybody that's watching this debate tonight is give me a chance. You know, one time I was campaigning with Joe Biden, and he told me when he ran for office the first time, he would knock on people's doors and he would say, "I'm Joe Biden, look me over." I just want people to get to know me. People in Western Pennsylvania know me pretty well. Out in the rest of the state, they're getting to understand that I show up, answer every question. If I'm asked a question about tax rates, I'll answer it, or any other subject. And I think that's going to lead us to victory.
Thank you. Shifting to Mr. Fetterman, while we're still on the topic of electability, we direct the question to you. Both of your counterparts on the stage tonight have criticized you for the 2013 incident when you were mayor of Braddock. You confronted an unarmed black man who you believed may have been involved in a shooting and detained him with a gun until police arrived. If presented with the same situation, would you do anything differently today? You have 60 seconds.
Well, it's important that we first acknowledge the harm based on over-policing and profiling in the black community. It's important that we do that. But it's also important we contextualize Braddock as well, too. Braddock is a community that's 75% black, and I showed up in Braddock 20 years ago to teach GED classes because I wanted to help young people get their lives on track. And I ran for mayor 17 years ago because 2 of my students were gunned down because Braddock had a significant gun violence problem. And after running for mayor and winning, I attacked the gun violence problem in Braddock. And we succeeded. My proudest accomplishment was going 5.5 years, we stopped the killing. In 2013, I was outside on a cold January afternoon. I heard a burst of gunfire with my young son. I made a split-second decision to call 911, get my son to safety, and intercept an individual, the only individual out, running from where the gunfire came, and intercept him until our first responders arrived as Braddock's chief law enforcement officer and as the mayor.
15-second follow-up, though. Would you do anything differently today?
It's certainly not a situation that anyone would want to be involved with gun violence. But I'd like to point out that I'm the only Democrat on this stage that has successfully confronted crime and gun violence and has been in charge of a police department.
Did you do it?
Wait a minute, Mr. Lamb and Mr.
Shotgun?
Kenyatta, I am going to give you both a chance to answer on this. So the man involved in this incident, who is incarcerated for a separate crime, wrote to the Philadelphia Inquirer saying, quote, "It is inhumane to believe one mistake should define a man's life. I hope he," meaning Mr. Fetterman, "gets to be a senator." If that man is okay with it, Mr. Lamb, why aren't you? 60 seconds.
Well, in the same statement, the man said that he believes to this day John is lying about the question of whether he pointed the shotgun at him. The man is incarcerated, and John is one of the people who holds the keys to letting him out. He chairs the Board of Pardons. So I'm not surprised by that statement in the least. And it's a kind thing for him to say. At the time, not only did Christopher say that John pointed the shotgun right in his chest, John said that to the police. You know, as a prosecutor, I always look at a police report written at the time to understand what actually happened. And if you look at it, to this day, it says, Fetterman said he pulled the shotgun on the person in order to stop him. That's what John told the police at the time. That's what Christopher said at the time as well. But today, not only will John admit that he won't admit that he was pointing the gun at this person, he also won't really answer your question as to whether he did anything wrong and should have done it differently. And I just think that's disqualifying for any of us who have to work hard to gain the trust of the black community.
Mr. Kenyatta, same question. If the man who was involved in that incident says it's okay, why are you not okay with it? You have 60 seconds.
So let me just be crystal clear, because it's very rare we get John at an event. And so I'll say directly to the Lieutenant Governor, for somebody who has cut an image as an incredibly tough guy, you're so afraid of 2 little words. I'm sorry. You did take a 20-gauge shotgun, get in your pickup truck, travel into another town, and brandish that weapon at the chest of an unarmed black jogger. You did that. The problem is that John still, 9 years later, refuses to do one of the most important things that you want from any leader. You want them to be self-reflective. And I think John has gotten away with this for too long, with this idea that as long as he didn't know the jogger was black, it was fine what he did. It was not okay what John did. And John, I hope tonight you would say those 2 simple words. I'm sorry.
Mr. Fetterman, 30 seconds to respond on this incident.
I would like a lot to clarify. You know, I think it's important to mention that the people of Braddock who know me, that know my heart, know that that 2013 had nothing to do with what they're saying today. There was no profiling or anything involved. They know that. And that's why they reelected me by overwhelming margins to 2 additional terms as mayor. And at the end of the day, I want to be clear. That never happened. I never pointed the weapon at the individual. And everyone in Braddock knows. And not only does everyone in Braddock know what happened in 2013, we know what this is about here on the stage.
Mr. Kenyatta, I'm going to give you 15 seconds.
John, we get it. You have a black friend. The question is, did you point a 20-gauge shotgun at the chest of a black man? And you have an opportunity with all of Pennsylvania watching to say, I'm sorry. Are you going to say I'm sorry today, John?
That never happened.
So you're not going to say I'm sorry?
That never happened.
So you still refuse to say I'm sorry to this day?
I'm the only Democrat that successfully confronted
You're the only
gun
Democrat
violence.
who used a shotgun to chase down an unarmed black
Gentlemen,
jogger.
thank you.
Okay.
Lisa?
We do need to move on past this issue. I appreciate all of your comments, and you will also have a chance in your closing remarks if you would like to add anything additional on this. But we do have to switch gears here now. And switching gears, talking about a very different topic at this point. We're talking about hydraulic fracturing or fracking. Mr. Kenyatta, we will begin with you. This is an important industry for Pennsylvania in terms of jobs and low energy prices, but there are environmental concerns. Neighboring states have banned it. Mr. Kenyatta, you have called for a complete moratorium, but what do you say to Western Pennsylvania union workers and the communities, the people who rely on this industry?
I think we need to stop with this notion that this is about caring about, that these industries care about workers. These industries do not give a darn about these workers. They don't care about their health. These industries will leave at a moment's notice, go bankrupt, open with a different name, and leave workers holding the bag. Democrats and me, the only person who's actually going to stand up for workers. And so I would ask all workers, who do you trust to actually stand up for you? Do you trust the CEO of these big oil and gas companies that have made record profits? Or do you actually trust a working person from North Philadelphia who's been endorsed by so many people all across organized labor? Pennsylvania can be an energy leader, but I've been unequivocal about us being an energy leader in the good, green, clean energy jobs of the future, and about us treating the climate crisis like the crisis that it is. And my position has been clearly around no new natural gas permits.
Okay, so let me be clear on this. So 15 seconds clarification, a ban on fracking, a complete ban on fracking, yes or no?
I said no new permits. I don't even know if you can just go and take permits that have already been approved. This is about what we're going to do in the future. Is Pennsylvania going to be the place or not that leads the way on geothermal, on bio, on wind, on solar? I want us to do that.
Thank you very much. Turning to Mr. Fetterman now. In a 2016 primary debate, you supported a ban on fracking, saying, quote, there is no such thing as a green fracker. In 2018, you were elected into the Wolf administration, though, which supports the industry. So where exactly do you stand on this issue? You have 60 seconds, sir.
Yeah, the position has been wholly consistent. I called for a moratorium, and I also have always consistently called for an extraction tax. We are the only state where fracking occurs that doesn't actually have an extraction tax, and that would generate billions in revenue for Pennsylvania. But I also was calling for much more stringent environmental regulations. That was the basis of what I said in 2016, and those laws were ultimately implemented, and we developed a series of environmentally sound protocols, and at that point, those objections cease to exist. Fracking is an important industry in Pennsylvania because it allows us to be energy independent and also a lot of jobs as well too. But two things are true at the same time. Why we continue to produce natural gas, we need to make a common sense transition, an honest transition to a green, clean, new economy. And we can't just turn our back on the workers and those communities and say, just learn how to code. It's a commitment that's going to take decades, not a short 2 to 5 year kind of window.
All right, Mr. Lamb, when Congress passed the Energy Policy Act of 2005, there was a loophole that exempted fracking from safety regulations, excuse me, from the safety regulations stemming from the Safe Drinking Water Act. With federal hands tied, it's seemingly up to the states at this point to decide how they want to regulate fracking. So as a U.S. Senator, would you support or oppose legislation to close this loophole? You have 60 seconds, sir.
I could definitely support that legislation, but I think, before we sort of get to the question of safe drinking water, I would just say we need to be thinking about our energy policy like a stool that is supported by 3 legs. And one of them is we need to emit less carbon to deal with climate change. The other is people need to be able to afford it, average people, at a time that their costs are going up in every other category. And the third is we need to be creating jobs in our state, not taking them away. Fracking allows us to do all 3 of those things because it has brought home heating prices and electricity prices down by an average of $1,000 per family in our state. It has created jobs in my congressional districts that lost jobs due to steel and coal closures. It was the first thing that came and brought good paying jobs to these people, and it has actually allowed us to emit less carbon as a country, not more, because it took market share away from coal. It can do the same thing around the world and reduce the influence of people like Vladimir Putin. In this campaign so far, John has been for fracking in western Pennsylvania and against it in eastern Pennsylvania. So I guess because we're in central Pennsylvania tonight, you get a little bit of both.
I'm going to actually give Mr. Fetterman a 15-second response to what Mr.
I won't
Lamb
need
just said.
15 seconds. That's just categorically false. I'm not. My position has been consistent all along. And one other thing, I actually have never taken a dime from the fracking industry, whereas Connor Lamb has accepted tens of thousands in donations from the fracking industry. So you can draw your own conclusion about whose opinions and where they come from.
All right.
John, you haven't taken a dime, but you've taken their positions, which is all the big oil and gas companies want you to do. So really, this is a cheap date. 6 years ago, when John was running, he said even the Paris Climate Accords didn't go far enough because it wasn't compulsory. And so when there's this idea that John is a progressive in this race, he is clearly not.
We have to move on. We have a
I
lot
would
of
like a
topics.
response.
We
Well,
will
just a
give
minute.
Connor Lamb a chance to respond since he was mentioned directly. 15 seconds, but then we really do need to move on to the
That's
next
fine.
topic.
I've never taken a dime of political contributions from any corporation. I do accept contributions from individuals, especially those who create jobs in my district.
And
but
lobbyists for
I've
the
got-
fracking industry.
Okay,
I'm
gentlemen,
sorry, I'd
let's-
like to finish my answer without being interrupted.
ahead.
I mean, that's another quality of being a senator that would be valuable.
seconds,
It's the
go ahead.
self-control to only speak when it's your turn. The people who support me are the workers whose jobs were created on the pipelines and at the construction sites enabled by fracking. And they're very important to me and to the Democratic Party.
Thank you. On to a topic that has gripped our state, our nation, and our globe for 2 years, health care and the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Fetterman, we're going to begin with you. Philadelphia just reinstated a mask mandate, while on the very same day, a federal judge struck down the transportation mask mandate. What should be the threshold for government mandates? Positive tests, hospital capacity, or something else? 60 seconds, Mr. Fetterman.
I think going forward, I have to say I don't agree with the imposition of the Philadelphia mask mandate. I don't. I mean, obviously that's their decision as a local jurisdiction. I think the approach should be vaccinations are safe. They've proven to work. I'm vaccinated. My family, my children are all vaccinated and boosted, and that needs to be what we as a country need to move forward. We have to move past COVID. We have to rebuild our business community. We have to get and keep our kids back in school, and we have to acknowledge that this virus cost, trillions in lost revenue. It's cost us 1 million lives, but at this point we have to live with this virus, and I don't believe going backwards with a mask mandate or with closures is appropriate at this point. We need to move forward and also establish an office of pandemic preparedness so we don't ever have to go through this level of severity again. I think it's something that should be separated from the CDC.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. We're going to turn to you. Same question. What should be the threshold for government mandates? Positive tests, hospital capacity, or something else? You have 60 seconds.
Well, I think the truth is that it's a mix of factors, and that's why we try to leave these decisions up to the career professionals who don't really have any political interest at stake, and they've actually sworn an oath just to try to keep people healthy and safe. When I was in the Marine Corps, sometimes they would make us wear gas masks or these plate carriers in our vests that were supposed to keep you safe from bullets or threats or whatever, but they're very uncomfortable and nobody liked wearing them. But we wore them because the people who made that decision were trying to do what was best for us. I hate wearing masks. I'm on a lot of planes and trains and all the rest of it, and I wish it could go away. But I do think the people who are considering this are trying to do what's best for everybody, and that's why I would leave it up to them and not a lone federal judge.
Yes or no, do you support the Philadelphia mask mandate?
Yeah, I mean, it's their right to do it. Again, I think they're doing it for the right reason. I don't enjoy it, but they they did the best they could.
Mr. Kenyatta, we turn to you. You are the only Philadelphian on the stage. Do you support the Philadelphia mask mandate, and what do you think the threshold should be for government mandates? Positive test, hospital capacity, or something else? You have 60 seconds.
You know, I think we really have to look to the CDC on this. The CDC has not been in line with where the Philadelphia Health Department is on this, and so right now I'm opposed to it. But ultimately, this is another reason why it's so important to have a government that reflects the fullness of the American experience. This pandemic hit Black and brown communities incredibly hard. This is one of the moments where we see the devastating impacts of a social safety net and a health safety net that has failed so many people. You know, growing up so often for me, my doctor was whoever the heck was on call at the emergency room. I mentioned, you know, watching my mom ration her insulin. I buried both of my parents by the time I was 27, just because they didn't have the type of health care everybody deserves. We need a government that reflects us and reflects the people who are most impacted by things like this.
Thank you. Lisa.
All right, we're staying with the issue of health care, this time taking a broader look. Mr. Fetterman, you are quite clear on your campaign website that you believe that health care is a basic human right. Describe your proposal to make health care accessible to all. You have 60 seconds, sir.
Yeah, I do believe that health care is a basic fundamental right. And if I'm your next United States Senator, I would support whatever path wherever we are able to get to that place, whether that's expanding the Affordable Care Act. I would like to lower the Medicare enrollment age. I would like to expand Medicare to include vision, dental, and hearing. I would like to make sure that the federal government is able to negotiate better drug prices. We're the largest purchaser of pharmaceuticals in the world, yet we are unable to negotiate. I think that's fundamentally fair, and the savings toward that could be put towards offsetting our nation's healthcare costs. Whatever that looks like, whether it's Medicare for all, whether it is expanding the Affordable Care Act, we need to get to a place in this country where any citizen has access to quality health care, because I believe it's a fundamental human right. And I'm always going to come down on the side of voting for whatever gets us closer to that universal idea that healthcare is a basic fundamental human right for every citizen of this country.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lamb. You have supported the Affordable Care Act along with cutting prescription drug prices, also lowering the eligibility age for Medicare from 65 to 60. Where do you stand on universal health care? You have 60 seconds to respond, Mr. Lamb.
I am someone that believes in both rights and responsibilities. So I agree that universal health care is a right, but we have a responsibility to be specific with people and have a plan that we can actually implement and carry out to deliver that. The Affordable Care Act has done that in a little over a decade. It has added tens of millions of people to the insurance rolls. It is capping out-of-pocket costs. Our efforts to lower prescription drug prices by allowing Medicare to negotiate would not only bring those prices down, they would add dentures, glasses, and hearing aids to Medicare for free, which would make life better for a lot of people. I believe that supporting Medicare for all is impractical. Most of its advocates do not have a plan to pay for it. It would cost somewhere around $30 trillion over the next decade, which is the same size as our total national debt at the moment. Again, in a time of so much uncertainty, of prices going up all over the place and people being very stressed about just how they're going to get through the day, I think they're looking for steadiness and sanity here. But what they would get in John as a nominee is someone who ran around the state with Bernie Sanders supporting Medicare for all. That's all that they would see in the upcoming campaign, and it would be a real detriment to our ticket.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. We're going to turn to Mr. Kenyatta here. According to your campaign's website, Medicare for all is your goal. So in the past, it has failed, though, to gain enough support. So one, how do you propose to get bipartisan votes for this, and how do you pay for it?
Here's the reality. I've said consistently that I think we need to get to Medicare for all, but I've also said that the way you implement it is not something we're going to flick a light switch and it's going to be implemented. The president has said he supports a public option. That would get us a lot closer to getting more people covered who aren't covered right now, and allow people who don't like their current health care plan with their employer to have coverage, or people who are low income to have coverage. One of the things that we know that we can get done, and that we could get done immediately, is deal with the cost of prescription drugs. There are very few things that are more personal to me. I've lost loved ones because of our inability to deal with it. You have people who are going out of the country to go to Canada and other places to get insulin because it's too expensive. And so we need to allow Medicare to negotiate those drug prices. And that is one of the things that we can do, I think, on day one if I'm your next United States Senator.
All right, thank you, sir. We have to move on to the next topic. We want to get a number of topics in.
Moving on to immigration and Title 42, which allows the federal government to prevent migrants along the southern border from entering the country during health emergencies like the pandemic. And that is set to expire May 23rd. For this question, we're going to do something a little different. I want to ask you to raise your hands, and then we're going to come back to you and have you elaborate. But raise it if you are in favor of extending Title 42, which would continue to keep undocumented immigrants from entering the country. Raise your hand if you support that. And I first want to go to Mr. Lamb. You raised your hand. Why?
Well, what Title 42 is was a measure that we took for the pandemic as a way of trying to control the flow of variants and exposure to the pandemic from outside the country into it. So I think it's logical that Title 42 would stay in effect as long as the pandemic lasts. So what I would support would be a bill that says Title 42 stays in place until at least 60 days after the CDC says that the pandemic is over. I think that's a pretty simple public health measure that everybody could support and understand.
Mr. Kenyatta, you did not raise your hand. You do not support extending it. Why not 60 seconds?
Because this is more complex than just raising your hand. Here's the reality. The president has reversed the position. It's going to be reversed. My question and my consistent approach to this has been, now what is the plan to make sure that people who are coming to seek asylum, that they're processed? What is the plan to rush resources so that people are treated with a level of humanity and dignity? But at the end of the day, when we're thinking about this, this is the fundamental problem with Washington and why we have to change Washington. Administration after administration after administration has promised that we're going to get comprehensive immigration reform. Politicians talk about how important immigration reform is. They get to Washington, I don't know what happens, but they don't actually get it done. We need comprehensive immigration reform, has a pathway to citizenship where we actually rush resources to the border to process asylum claims humanely, and that we deal with the issues around our dreamers so they have a level of safety and security.
Mr. Fetterman, you raised your hand. You want to extend it. Title 42, you have 60 seconds. Why?
I believe it requires a deeper level of planning and understanding of exactly where the pandemic's going to continue. And I think it would be a rash judgment to revoke it too soon without careful consideration of the direction of where ultimately COVID's going. I think we need to make sure we have that figured out before we lift Title 42. But also, we need to enact and have for decades comprehensive, compassionate, common sense immigration reform in this country. My wife was a former dreamer. Immigration makes America America, and I've long been a proponent of what immigration stands for and what it holds for this country. And we as a nation need to develop a bipartisan and comprehensive solution for our immigration crisis.
Mr. Kenyatta, 15 seconds.
I just want to say, like, for progressives who are at home and think John's progressive option, look at this. Just a couple of questions ago, he said we need to move away from the pandemic. Pandemic's over. We don't need masks. And now he's saying we have to keep this in place because we have a pandemic. Now, it's fine whatever side of this issue you're on, but he's on every side of every issue.
All right, Mr. Fetterman, I'll give you 15 seconds to respond to that, and then we need to move on.
The bottom line is simply this. Just arbitrarily lifting this in May isn't the right call, and I don't support that. I think it just needs to be thought out more and planned more thoroughly before you fully understand the direction that we're going from an immigration perspective here in this country.
Thank you. Lisa.
All right, on to the war in Ukraine. Mr. Kenyatta, as the next senator of Pennsylvania, you would represent one of the largest Ukrainian populations in the country. President Biden today announced an additional $800 million for heavy artillery and ammunition for Ukrainian forces. Do you support the United States taking on an expanded role and providing more military aid? You have 60 seconds, sir.
So anytime we talk about Ukraine, we have to first do two things. First, acknowledge the incredible heroism and bravery that we're seeing not only from the Ukrainian forces, but from everyday citizens who are stepping up to defend and protect their democracy. Right in my district, I have the Ukrainian Archdiocese, the Catholic Archdiocese, right in my district, and I've been talking to people about how painful this experience has been. And this was one of the reasons I endorsed President Biden on the day he announced his campaign, earlier than anybody on this stage, because because I felt like he would be prepared for a moment like this. He's rallied the international community, helped to isolate Vladimir Putin, and I think the additional aid that he's doing, that he announced today, is going to be critical. We need to make sure that Ukraine has more assistance from NATO in terms of aircraft from our allies like in Poland, and that we continue to look at every single way that we can ratchet up the pressure on Vladimir Putin, particularly as he's engaged in what amounts to a genocide in Mariupol.
All right, thank you. Mr. Fetterman, same question. Do you agree with President Biden's announcement to send more military aid to Ukraine?
I do. I do. And I also applaud President Biden in being able to rally the world community to impose sanctions that have helped cripple the Russian economy, and to impose further sanctions to make sure that Russia is punished in a manner that is commensurate with the war of aggression, on Ukraine. I think the most important issue here from an American perspective is we need to support Ukraine every way we can, whether that's like aid that President Biden released today and weapons, but we cannot, under any circumstances, risk having this escalate into a hot war with Russia. That's, to me, the overriding concern here, is that we want to help the people of Ukraine, but what would definitely not help the people of Ukraine is that this slid into World War III, and this turns into a hot war with Russia. We cannot afford to take that risk, and I think President Biden is wise to make sure that that is a clear red line that he will not cross.
All right, Mr. Lamb, I see you nodding as well. 60 seconds. Do you support the U.S. sending more heavy artillery to ammunition for Ukrainian forces?
I do, absolutely. And while I share John's concerns about a nuclear exchange, I think that this administration is cautious and mature enough to prevent that. I believe that the explicit and stated policy of the United States should be that Ukraine will win this war with our assistance, no matter how long it takes and no matter what it takes. And that's because I think this is about a lot more than just Ukraine. I think that the world is basically dividing itself between democracies and autocracies. And what's different about this than the Cold War is that this time the autocracies have a lot more economic and technological might on their side. And so in the future, we really are going to need to knit together the free world to be one trading bloc, one economic bloc, one human rights bloc, and even one military bloc to withstand the pressure that that's going to create and protect our people and protect our interests. We can do that best by showing the resolve to win this war and send the Russians and Putin back where they came from.
All right, I have a follow-up for all three of you, but we'll begin with you, Mr. Kenyatta. Is there a line that Russia could cross at which point you would support the official deployment of American troops as part of this conflict? You have 30 seconds to respond.
I do not support sending troops to Ukraine. If you do that, we get the opposite of the result that we need. The result that we need is for Vladimir Putin to recognize the folly of this war, to be held accountable at the ICC, and to actually put Ukraine on a path to rebuild, for people who are refugees right now to be able to come home and reunite families. If you send in American troops, then you are not ratcheting down the temperature, you're ratcheting it up.
All right, Mr. Fetterman, same question. Is there a line where you would support sending American troops to Ukraine?
I wouldn't. As I answered earlier, my primary concern is this escalating into a hot war. And that's something that would, of course, be catastrophic for Ukraine, but it would be catastrophic for the world. So I would not support sending U.S. troops into the situation, which could easily continually escalate into a set of circumstances beyond our control.
Mr. Lamb, same question, 30 seconds. Is there a point where you would see the official deployment of American forces in Ukraine?
The line for me is NATO. We are bound by the NATO treaty to defend our NATO allies with troops, as they defended us in Afghanistan, by the way. And so I think if Putin took a shot at Poland or moved into Romania or even sent destructive drones into those places to try to brush us back, then I think we would use our troops by any means necessary to protect our NATO allies and the Ukrainians. And that would be an escalation caused by Vladimir Putin, not chosen by us.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Dennis?
First question is going to be directed to Mr. Fetterman. There's growing support among voters of both parties for legalizing recreational marijuana. Several states, including neighbors New York and this very day, New Jersey, began allowing the use of marijuana for recreational purposes. Mr. Fetterman, is it time for the federal government to do the same? You have 60 seconds.
Yeah, it's been a long time before the federal government should have gotten to this point. I'm proud to say that I was the only national candidate campaigning on legalizing marijuana back in 2016. For a lot of different reasons. One, there's an enormous racial component, whereas it is disproportionately impactful of people in communities of color with the enforcement of criminal charges. It would create billions in revenue, certainly here in Pennsylvania, long-term revenue, and much more nationally. It would also create tens and thousands, hundreds of thousands of jobs nationally across our country. It would also provide a cash crop for our farmers. It would also provide our veterans another tool to address PTSD with the use of medical cannabis to allow them to help go forward in their lives, overcoming their trauma as well too. There's really no reason to oppose the legalization of marijuana. And the only one reason to do that is reefer madness, and we need to move past that as a country.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. As you mentioned, you're a former prosecutor. How do you feel about it? Should the federal government allow recreational marijuana use? You have 60 seconds.
I recently voted for a bill to decriminalize it as well. It's just not a serious criminal threat on the level of heroin and fentanyl and gun violence and all the rest. Where I may differ a little bit from my colleagues here on the stage is I think it has to be done slowly and very carefully so that we address questions like, what does the head of a construction crew do the day after it becomes legal and his heavy equipment operators could potentially be testing positive for cannabis? What do you do if your child's school bus driver tests positive for cannabis or has it in their system? We need some clearer rules and regulations to make sure that everything is safe, that the labor problems we already have in this country don't get any worse. But for the reasons mentioned, it would be good to remove the stigma of it and deal with some of the inequities it has caused over time.
Thank you. Mr. Kenyatta, to you. With many states allowing recreational marijuana, New Jersey is not far from Philadelphia, as you know. Is it time for the federal government to do the same? You have 60 seconds.
Well, the congressman must have got a contact high down there in Washington, because he used to be against this, and now he's for it. The reality is we do not need to do this slowly. We need to do it. We should have done it a long time ago. And what do you do if somebody's drunk on the job? We see 0 overdose deaths from cannabis. But what we do see is that African Americans and black and brown Pennsylvanians are 285% more likely to be detained and arrested for having a bag of weed in their pocket. This is why I keep going back to the importance of having people who understand in their bones what it means when government acts or doesn't act. I understand that. This is a civil rights issue. This is an issue for the future of our economy. And frankly, this is an issue for our farmers who will be happy to begin to grow this product. And I just believe that Pennsylvania, we would do it best.
Thank you.
Can I respond to that? Can I respond to that, please?
15 seconds.
Yeah. I just want to clarify that I voted against a similar bill in the past because it did not contain steps to do this carefully. It was just sort of willy-nilly decriminalization. But one thing I know in my bones is how swing voters feel about many of these issues, because I've actually won their votes before. They're looking for stability and caution in our leadership.
Thank you. Lisa.
All right. Moving on to the next topic. Over the past 2 weeks, our state has seen an eruption of gun violence. Pittsburgh experienced a mass shooting where 2 17-year-olds were killed and 8 others were shot. And across the state, Philadelphia experienced a record 24 shootings in a 24-hour period. Turning to you, Mr. Lamb, as a U.S. Senator, name one thing that you would do at a federal level to treat the epidemic of violent crime in this country. You have 60 seconds, sir.
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure here. So there are things we can do on background checks and closing loopholes that are very important. But I think the most important is we need to shift law enforcement dollars and priorities away from the nonviolent drug crimes that still get prosecuted as a result of the war on drugs and toward a more aggressive approach to gun violence. We do not do enough firearms trafficking prosecution. Stop the flow of guns into Philadelphia, into Pittsburgh. I guarantee you that those children were not possessing that AR-15 in Pittsburgh legally, but it got to them because we are too weak on the trafficking of these firearms. I used to do these cases for a living, and I know that as a member of the Judiciary Committee, I could write bills and most importantly budgets to make us a lot better at policing that and cut down on the flow of guns.
30-second follow-up. Do you support new gun control measures, Mr. Lamb?
Yes, I do. And I voted for every one of them since I've been in the House.
All right. Mr. Kenyatta, what would you do to stem violent crime at a national level? You have 60 seconds.
What's heartbreaking for me is I can leave this debate and go home tonight to North Philadelphia and have another person gunned down in my neighborhood. Just 2 days ago, 64-year-old man was sitting in his car a couple of blocks from my house and was shot in the head. And so for me, there are very few things that are more personal and emotional for me. I've laid out a 3-point plan of what I think we need to do. First, and this has been the core of my campaign, we have to make the American bargain real for every family. That's a good job, good school, quality health care, and a dignified retirement. Communities that are safer and have those things that I outlined, those are communities that are safer. We also have to pass so many stall pieces of gun safety legislation, many of which I have co-sponsored or introduced at the state level, dealing with lost and stolen guns. We had 300 weapons that were part of a gun trafficking ring from Georgia that was just disrupted the other day. And then we need a whole of government approach. I've called on the governor and the mayor of Philadelphia to declare a state of emergency on this, and they should.
All right, thank you. Mr. Fetterman, what would you do to stem violent crime at a national level? 1 minute for your answer.
Specifically gun violence, I really believe, and I was the first campaign to call for the elimination of the filibuster, because I believe as a country we need to pass a comprehensive basket of common sense gun control legislation. And we are unable to do that as a nation because that would require a threshold of 60 votes, which we will never get because we would need 10 to 12 Republicans to join our ranks and decide that, yes, we want to join you in banning assault rifles. We want to join you in passing red flag laws. We want to make it more difficult for dangerous and unstable people to own a weapon. So passing comprehensive legislation at a federal level that an overwhelming majority of Americans want is only possible by eliminating the filibuster. And if I'm your next United States Senator, I would support that step and be that 51st vote to lean in to make sure we were able to generate the kind of common sense gun reform legislation that, again, 80 to 90% of Americans want and we need right now in this environment of rampant gun violence.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Dennis?
Let's talk about the Biden administration. Now I'm going to ask you to do something a little different, one at a time. I'm going to go down the row. I want a quick response, and then we'll give you a chance to follow up and explain. We would like you to give the president a letter grade for his first year in office, A through F. What would it be? Just what's the letter grade, Mr. Lamb?
B+.
Mr. Fetterman?
B+.
Mr. Kenyatta?
A-.
A-. Let's start with you, Mr. Kenyatta, on the A-. Why an A-? And does that mean you support the exit from Afghanistan, inflation, and gas prices?
Dennis, who supports inflation and higher gas prices? Here's the reality. This is Putin's price hike at the pump. This has nothing to do with the president. The president has helped spearhead transformational legislation, but the problem is he has not had a Senate that has been there to help him finish the job. The problem is not with Joe Manchin. With Joe Biden. The problem is with another Joe, and that's Joe Manchin, who has held up the entire plethora of bills, including the Build Back Better package, which would transform so many areas of American life, from universal pre-K, 2 years of community college, lowering the cost of prescription drugs. It goes on and on. But if you look at the president's leadership around Ukraine, you look at passing the American Rescue Plan, you look at him passing the bipartisan infrastructure plan. He invited me to the White House to be there. And Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, first African-American on the Supreme Court ever. He has a record that he can campaign on. What he needs to do is get out of Washington and get back to home to Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Fetterman. You did not give him an A. What would the president have need to have done to get an A from you?
Well, I tell you, here's what I think he would have gotten an A if we could have gotten Joe Manchin on board to deliver the votes that they need to pass a lot of this transformative legislation like Build Back Better and other important bills, whether it's voting rights legislation and all these other things. Say what you will about Bernie Sanders, at least he supported and voted for Joe Biden's agenda as opposed to Joe Manchin, your mentor, and someone that's endorsed you in this 2022 race. So, you know, the bottom line is Joe Biden deserves A if we could have Democrats voting together like Democrats and lean in and deliver transformative legislation. And I would be that senator as that 51st vote in that.
Mr. Lamb, you also did not give the president an A. What should he have done to have earned an A from you? 60 seconds.
Right. First of all, I'm just not sure who John thinks he's sharing the stage with. I am the one person who has voted for every item in Joe Biden's legislative agenda, including Build Back Better, which allowed it to pass the House with very narrow margins. What the president could have done better and can do better, and we all can do better, is address the real physical, emotional stress and pain that most of our constituents are living through every single day as a result of these rising prices, fatigue with the pandemic, real fears about Ukraine. I mean, I was talking to a woman in Cumberland County, I think it was, last weekend, and she just looked at me and said, my family isn't making it. I have to stay home with my daughter every single day. My husband lost his job for a while in the pandemic. You guys aren't getting us enough help. The way I think about leadership is, if that woman is telling that to me, we're not doing an A job. It doesn't matter how great our intentions are, which are great. We have to do more. We have to find more ways to comfort people and speak to the situation that they're in, which I think is a big part of what this campaign is about.
Thank you. Lisa.
Okay, so now we want to fire off some rapid fire questions. I want to ask you to share one quality you admire most about the other two candidates on the stage. We have to keep it brief because we're running out of time. 15 seconds. Mr. Fetterman, you go first.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Qualities that you admire about the other two men who are standing on the stage with you.
I just think they're outstanding Democrats. When I look at what's on the other side of the aisle, I look at a weird celebrity TV doctor, and I look at a Connecticut hedge fund manager, and I look at how out of touch and...
All right, Mr. Lamb, I'm sorry, I apologize for the short time, but Mr. Lamb, qualities that you admire about the gentleman with you, standing with you.
Height is one. For both of them.
I wish I had his hair. I'll be honest with you.
Okay, we're running out of time.
No, it's commitment to the democracy. Regardless of how we vary on specific issues, we're all here to try to protect the democracy as best we can.
All right, Mr. Kenyatta, quickly.
I thought they were going to lay it on thicker. You know, these are both two incredible family men. They're both great dads, and I know how much they care about the Democratic Party and making sure we beat whatever out-of-state billionaires on the other side.
All right, well, our debate is coming to a close. We now turn to closing statements. We will go in reverse polling order. 30 seconds. We begin with you, Mr. Kenyatta.
I think Pennsylvanians understand that the Senate is broken. And if we want to change the Senate, we have to change the senators. I grew up in a working poor family in North Philadelphia. Dad a social worker, mom a home healthcare aide. Got my first job at 12, washing dishes, a little vegan soul food restaurant. Buried both of my parents by the time I was 27. Understand what it means when government works or doesn't work. Pennsylvania is your next United States Senator. I will be a champion for my family and for every single one of yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Lamb, closing comment, 30 seconds.
Thank you for watching tonight. The stakes are so high. Losing this particular Senate seat would mean no Voting Rights Act, no Women's Health Protection Act, no action on so many important issues. It will mean effectively we cannot govern. I have won in situations like this one. There's a group of swing voters out there that we don't talk enough about. I'm the one who can go and win them in November and bring us to victory. I've done it before. I've knocked on their doors. I've been talking to them for the last 4 years. They're not big liberals, but they've supported me because of my records of service to the country, and they'll do it again.
Thank you. Mr. Fetterman, closing comment, 30 seconds.
We got to be honest, 2022 is going to be a tough cycle for Democrats, and we're going to need a candidate that has always embraced the 67 county strategy, a candidate that has built an unparalleled grassroots movement to make sure that we are able to put up the margins that we're going to need to win in these red or smaller counties, and we believe we are that. It should go without saying that running in the Senate is a statewide election, and we have run and won statewide here in Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Lisa.
All right, we are out of time, gentlemen, but we would like to thank all of our candidates for participating in tonight's debate. Don't forget, Pennsylvania primary election day is May 17th.
And don't forget, Monday, top Republican candidates for the U.S. Senate race will face off at 8 p.m. And don't forget, the Republican gubernatorial candidates will debate on Wednesday night. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, thanks to our candidates. Have a great night.